Doing?
Good. Good evening.
Good
We
evening.
both have had a super busy week, right?
Yeah, yeah, we have.
Oh my goodness. Getting ready for the retreat. Ange and I have been working on it on and off for
Yeah.
a long time.
Oh,
But I think we're ready. We're excited. But we
yeah.
wanted to jump on and just kind of cover this subject about loving difficult people. God has brought it up to us over the last, I don't know, what, month or two?
Yeah.
Our whole lives.
Yeah, but it does feel like he's kind of put his finger on it more lately.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll let you get started. I'm going to check my volume here.
All right. Well, yeah, Barb and I have kind of been processing this, especially over the last month, about how we really feel strongly like God is pressing us um, to just really love people where they're at. And it's requiring a lot of ourselves. It's teaching us a lot about unconditional love, and it feels a lot bigger than what we're able to give, you know. But I think that, just like today, I had shared about moving from glory to glory. And I feel like not only are we responsible before the Lord to move from glory to glory ourselves, like to keep, growing in our faith and promoting in the spirit into higher levels of Him, but by our love, by the way that we love people into wholeness and meeting them where they're at, we're helping them to grow into their next glory. And it could ultimately end up changing their life and helping them to walk in their purpose. So I I guess I'll ask you, Barb, like, what have you been learning the most in just in the last couple of months about, your love, like your capacity to love? Like where where are you being challenged?
Oh
Like,
my goodness. Um, yeah, I think it's really to love like that is beyond us, or it's definitely beyond me. Because, but God has a way of bringing us into that space where, yeah, we really don't have a choice but to ask for His help and to be able to see people through His eyes. And the only thing I keep thinking, it is really more about dying to self
yeah.
than even loving another person, because you kind of have to give up everything that you should, please don't talk to me like that, please, all these things that we protect ourselves with, right? And to really love that person, know that they're coming from a space maybe that we haven't been in before, um, and certain things trigger them that may not, we think it's silly, but to them it's a big deal. Just like things that are a big deal to us, they might be like, I don't get it, like, why are you upset about that? I don't know. So I have had quite a few different challenges, and I think the closer to home it comes, like if it's in our home, it, and I think more than not, it's usually in our home to the people that we love the most and we're the closest to, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's um, a lot at
Yeah,
stake there.
so true. It's like, as parents, it's like when our kids screw up or they make a poor decision or whatever, like we're pretty quick to show unconditional love. And because they're ours, they're
Mm-hmm.
our kids. And we're protective of our own. But it's like when that person that you're forced to love is placed on your doorstep, rather it would be a spouse or like an elderly parent that moved in with you, or a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law, or whatever, it stretches you beyond like your capacity of just loving your own children. Like now you've got more people in your inner circle that you have to love unconditionally too. And it's like, it kind of pushes you into a corner when they're placed on your doorstep, because you're like, okay, it's either do or die. You like, you know, it's so stretching. And I've just really come to realize that I have not really had a grid or an understanding for unconditional love. Like, we know that, like God says, he gives us unconditional love. I mean, we know that. It's a little hard to wrap our heads around it because we're such performance driven people. And so we think if we screw up that somehow he's angry at us and he's going to throw us away, right? But about us giving unconditional love, like that's a whole nother ball game, because honestly, I don't think we've really been taught that. Like we have to come to a place where we walk that out and we have to practice it. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if we've been taught that, but I think as women, we do that. We do it with our children. I mean, they don't do a whole lot for us, right? They come to us very needy, and we just love them regardless. And as they grow, they can be little, smarty pantses and whatever. They make really sometimes big mistakes, and we see that good. We just want to keep calling it out, right? Because it's wired in us as mothers, right? Because we're not expecting, anything else than to, like, our goal is to make them happy. That makes us happy when they're happy, right? And even with our pets, what do our pets do other than lay around, make our house dirty, eat a bunch of food? Mine in particular slobbers on me. And I just want to make his life lovely. So, and I'm not expecting. I think there's something, when it comes to other individuals, whether it be our spouse or friends, we have expectations, right, on them. We want them to meet our need or our needs. And when they don't, it's very upsetting, right? So I don't know. I think there is something there that we do with our children, and something as silly as a pet. And maybe it's easier for us to do because our expectations aren't out there and they're not super high. Like when we fall in love, we're like, this is amazing. This person makes me feel this, that, this, what? And then when they don't, and they're not meeting those expectations anymore, we're like really put out, right? We're not going to give unless they give. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting what you said about, our needs. Because I'm like, okay, our kids, obviously, when they're babies, they're needy. So we are conditioned as mothers to start meeting their needs from the time we bring them home. And we kind of don't have any real expectations of them. So interesting that you would bring that up. It's like, it checks my heart a little bit. Like, do I love people because I love them, because it's the right thing to do? Or do I love them because I need something filled in me? I have an expectation that needs met for me. Do I give because, then I can see what I can receive?
Right.
Like, I mean, it's just a caution or a reason to just pause and reflect.
Yeah.
Why am I loving these people? Am I expecting something back? Do I have an ulterior motive? And I think so many of us have had relationships like that, where we're like, okay, I'm kind of, like jumping through hoops and leaping over walls for this person. They say they love me, but I feel like I'm sacrificing a lot of myself to fulfill something in them that needs filled.
Yeah. I think it's hard as a human being because, I mean, all those things are true. I don't think we necessarily do it purposely to receive something, but there's deep down inside of us. I mean, we have needs,
Yeah.
and it's this tug and pull, because the Lord says just love them, right? And love them as I love my church. And back and forth, we're to love each other unconditionally. And when you love somebody like that, it's easy to love them back, and vice versa. But if you're waiting for the other person to show up, so you show up, it goes the opposite direction. So it's not easy to have that unconditional love, but we definitely need his help. But I think we can see a glimpse of it, of that unconditional love with our children. So we know it's possible, right? Not that they don't hurt us and we don't get hurt, and we do expect something from them, but it's not the same as we expect from other people, I don't think.
Wow, that's so true. And
But
it's
I think it's a lifelong pursuit of trying to lay down your own needs and love other people regardless, right?
and honestly, I mean, to love people well, like, it requires something of us. You know, it's like, whether that would be like laying things down, laying down a fence,
Mm-hmm.
forgetting what they did to us yesterday so that we can move on and have a better tomorrow. Like, are we hanging on to bitterness and resentment? Are we, it requires something of us. It requires us to go beyond um, our own capabilities and to reach for like a power that is so much greater than us, to be able to love people past all their flaws.
Right.
And
And I think what tends to happen is when we feel hurt, or we feel our expectations aren't met, what we can slip into is beginning to self-protect. And what do I mean by that? Self-protect is when you're gonna take it upon yourself because you're fearful, right, that you're gonna get taken advantage of. And or we can allow God to fight our battles, and he can protect us. But when we self protect, what happens is everything kind of goes sideways, right? We start to build walls. And dying. But walls don't only keep the hurt out, they keep the love out too. So they're not good. But that's what we tend to do when we self protect. We build our own walls, right? And the opposite is when we're going under God's protection, he's showing us what healthy boundaries look like, what righteous boundaries look like. No, it's not okay to, be what do you call
a
a
doormat.
doormat? I was going to say a floor mat, a doormat. It's not okay to be obviously abused. You have to set these boundaries, but boundaries are much different. I see them as something that you can still see over. It's just like, you can't cross this, right? Because if you do, this is the consequence. Walls just go, and it keeps everything out, even the good stuff. So when we have boundaries up, those are really healthy. And God can do what God wants to do, and he protects us, right? But when we try to self-protect ourselves, it gets really messy. And I think that's what a lot of us do, because expectations aren't met. We're all about protecting our own interest. And then it really goes backwards, sideways, all the wrong ways. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole self-protection thing in the walls that you were talking about, like, I can see from my past that I've done that. And but what's so weird about that, when you build your own walls of protection, is that you can easily go into this space where you're like, oh, they're just like so and so. They're just like, grandma. They're just like my mother. Like, just, and then what ends up happening, because you have unforgiveness and you have unresolved issues with grandma or with mother or whatever, now you're lumping this person into the same, box that you've got the others, and you probably have some unrealistic views of that person. I mean, maybe they did something that felt familiar, that felt similar, but
Mhm.
they are them.
Mhm.
And so the walls not only, we think, protect us, but the walls also put people in a place that they don't deserve to be because they're not grandma.
It's
They're not.
so true. Like I know, I mean, this is super personal, but I know I've said things to my husband or just asked him a question, and he looks at me like, and I'm like, what? You look at me like I just called your mother a name, you know what I mean? And he's like, and I'm like, what do you think I just said there? Because there's a judgment somewhere else, something that is familiar to him, and he thinks that's where I'm coming from. And I'm like, I didn't even think that. I wasn't even going that direction with this. You know what I mean? And we do it to each other, right? When he says a certain thing, I may interpret it a certain way because I have a past hurt, right? So we do have to be careful with that. That's a great point, Ange.
For sure. It's like Dave's mom has a certain look that she gets on her face when she's annoyed. And every once in a while, I can see that on him. And we joke about it because I'll go, you look like your mother. I'm going to wipe that look off your face. But, it's really something how, as kids, I remember dad had certain looks, you know, when he was, you know, disappointed in us or whatever. And that look, it's like it gets seared into your heart. And so then when anybody has a look of disgust or a look of disapproval, it kind of touches that place
Mhm.
that has already been seared by that, like, oh, great, now I'm disappointing. Oh, great, I did it again. And it's like, man, you got to really learn how to take your thoughts captive, because you could have the most amazing person in front of you that they just have a little, you know, like a little something that they do now and then. Maybe they're not even annoyed. Maybe they're like just a deep thinker and they get a certain look when they're trying to think it through, and they just happen to be looking at you when they're processing. But you could end up retaliating towards them because that look triggers something in you from clear back.
And that's actually a gift because I'll tell my son, like, if he loses his temper over something, I'm like, this is really good because this is like an engine light going on. Like, why did you have that response to this? Because that doesn't, like, it doesn't fit. And I do the same thing. Like, if something, like, I can feel something inside me come up, like, and I'm like, "Rrr." And
Yeah.
okay, what in the world is that all about? Where's that coming from? Because the Lord wants to take you back someplace that he wants to go back to the situation that you're still feeling, that trigger that you're still feeling, right? And it's a gift because you have to go back to the root, because what's in front of you sometimes is not even the problem. It's just a reminder of something that hasn't been dealt with.
Well,
And
think about our friendship. Like we've been friends for, a long time, many years.
10 years.
Yeah.
I'm getting, my phone's about to die.
Okay. And
I don't know where it is.
it's really amazing to me, like, because I've come from relationships that have hurt me deeply. There's been times that even you have said something that it touches that, and I think, but then I know your heart. So I'm like, okay, I got to push past this. And you've had things that have been triggered, where I touch something, and it's like, I think that the Lord is just so good because he's showing us, like, not only how to unconditionally love people, but he's showing us how to pay really close attention to how we respond to people when they touch places in us that feel vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the next thing I wanted to bring up, is not only does this unconditional love show us what is required of us, that we got to extend far past what we're capable of as a person. We really have to have that agape love. We have to get a grid or an understanding for how God loves us so that we can love other people the same way, but also what it exposes in us.
Really good.
While we're trying to love, it exposes something in us.
It's yeah, it's like I say, it is a gift, because you can't just keep trying to avoid, like, don't say this to me, don't say that to me, because that, like deal with it. Like, why is that making you upset? Or why is that, why does that offend me so bad? Is there something I haven't dealt with? And get rid of that step by step. And if somebody is being triggered that you love by something you're saying, just say, okay, so what do you hear me say? Like, okay, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry that you feel like that, but where do you think that's coming from? And have those discussions. I think that's the way we work through it. But sometimes difficult people don't want to have those conversations, but we just have to know that that's when we put up a healthy boundary, not a wall, because we get into self-protection then. But by putting up that healthy boundary, it does protect. God is able to protect our hearts then. But
yeah, it's so interesting. And it's like, and also just meeting people where they are.
mm-hmm.
I had shared that today. I'll share a little bit about that if you want to go grab your charger. I'm fine.
I need to do that. My husband grabbed my charger, so I
need
to get it back.
Grab your charger. I'll share a little bit while you're doing that. But just meet people where they are. Like today I was sharing, and you can catch that live on Facebook, but I was sharing about moving from glory to glory. And it's like, we have to understand that there are seasons and times for everything. Like, we are Ecclesiastes 3. I talk about Ecclesiastes 3 all the time, but it's true. It's like there's seasons for everything. And we have more grace for ourselves to go through life circumstances and situations if we understand the season we're in. And but people are in seasons too. Other people go through seasons, and their seasons might look different than our seasons. In other words, like we are not necessarily going to go through the same exact thing at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's something powerful about how, while we're going through our seasons, that we have to extend grace to people while they're going through their seasons. Yeah. We're not going to all be going through the same thing at the same time. And if we, I shared today about like the butterfly in the cocoon. It's like the only way that it comes out beautiful and vibrant and new is through the pressing. It's stretching, and it looks ugly, and there's a lot of pressure. And we can't cut that cocoon, because if we do, like, it's going to fall out, and it's going to it will never survive, because what's built into it during the struggle is what makes it strong to be able to survive. And so it's like, while we're unconditionally loving people, we have to also see it as we cannot cut their cocoon while they're in the middle of a pressure, while they're in the middle of a struggle. Because if we're trying to just quickly force them out of their season so that they can be, right where we're at, then we're probably, basically cutting them off at the knees, and maybe they won't learn the valuable tools that were needed in that season that God wanted them to learn while they were in the struggle. Because why? Because they made us uncomfortable, and we just wanted to see them hurry up and snap out of it so that they could, partner with us or whatever. Like, we really have to meet people where they're at.
So true. I heard something really good by Brene Brown. And it kind of applies because, I mean, we can have seasons. I mean, in one day, we can have a few different seasons. Have you ever gotten up and just felt like the sky is falling and everything is wrong and you don't know how to go on? And then you call a good friend and something they say, you know, encourages you. You kind of see it in a different way. And before you know it, you can kind of be like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm having a great day. Or, you know, you could call a friend that would just be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. You're right. I mean, okay, so we can really be great for us, for each other if, you know, and our seasons can change. And she was talking about how relationships, let's just talk about spouses. You really need to try to have that 100%, but nobody gives 100%, right? At
Not
one time. What's that?
not every day.
Well, she said it's really like a collaborative kind of thing. Like sometimes, you know, your husband might have 40 and you make up for it and you try to do the 60%, right? And sometimes you're having a 20% day and they're going to try to show up for 80% of the time. You know what I mean? And she said her and her husband actually have this conversation and they'll come home if they've had a bad day. And her husband might be like, hey, listen, just so you know, after today, I'm running at about 20% here, you know? And she said, and I might be in a situation where I can say, I got you. I got your back. Because you're a team, right? It's not like, hey, what can you give me? It's like, okay, I'll make up the difference. And she said, now when we come home and he might say, I have 20%, and she's like, I got 10%. She said, that's a day that we just look at each other and we're kind to each other and say, okay, so what we're going to do tonight, we're going to order out. We're not going to talk about anything heavy. We're going to get to bed early. we're going to do our best just to know where each of us are. Like if we're both in a rough season or time of the day. And I was like, that is so good. Because if you could have that understanding, because so many times we're like, listen, I came home, I'm in a good mood, and why are you like this? Why can't you just be in a good mood, right? Because I know if I call a friend and they encourage me, it lifts me up. Now, so often with our spouse, we're just kind of like, hey, get it together. Like, I had a great day. Why are you ruining my day? It's not what you need to hear when you're in a bad season, right, Ann?
Yeah.
We don't do that to each other as friends. Why do we do that with spouses? And I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I think that would be such a powerful thing to do with our kids, to teach our
Yeah.
kids that, did you have a bad day, honey? Like here's the scale. Where are you at today? From 1 to 10, do you feel like you've got it all, or do you feel like you're right in the middle? How can I meet you there? How can I help you to be able to get to a 10 today? Like, do you need encouragement? Do you need prayer? Do you need, like, honestly, I think that if we would go into every relationship like that, like seeing it from a scale that, okay, we have no idea. They are off today. We can tell they're off.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what happened to them this morning. What kind of a day did they have that they showed up like that and they're just off, like they're just wonky, And if we could have the grace to be able to look at that from a scale, like you said, and go, ooh, they look like they're only given about 70% today. I wonder if they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
It could totally change the dynamics of even how we give unconditional love.
It's so true. I think that helps with the unconditional love. It's not having a condition on them. It's not having an expectation. It's just really valuing that person and knowing that we all have bad days. And how can we make that a little bit better? And when we're depleted, we just kind of say, okay, it's just one of those days. You go to your room, I'll go to my room. We're going to order in and I'll see you in the morning. You know what I mean? I'm going to pray for you rather than having that meltdown fight because you're both overwhelmed. You're both in not a great place. Okay. Yeah, I kind of do that with my son. When they're teenagers, they're very kind of up and down. They can just get up out of bed and you don't know what's going on. You're like, oh, but like I said, it's a little bit easier with our children
Well,
sometimes.
I mean, I don't know about you, but like I've had off seasons that have lasted a couple weeks. Like,
Yeah.
like you know me better than anybody. Like I had that car accident in April and I was a mess for about 3 weeks. Like I had to figure out, I had some emotional stuff going on and I didn't have a grid for it and I was trying to figure it out. But it's like, why is it that when we're connected with people that are a little difficult to love, that when they have a bad spell, 2 weeks, right? Well, if it's a couple days, you're like, they're just kind of a little off right now. But it gets into a week and we're impatient. We're over here tapping on the table, like, come on. And then 2 weeks in, you're like, okay, now you're just annoying. You should have had it together already. And now, then 3 weeks in now, they're still in their season. And we're going, okay, now you're just making me terribly uncomfortable. And then you got to look at it and go, okay, wait a minute. Are you in this with them for your comfort so that you feel better? Like, because heaven forbid they made you terribly uncomfortable this last 2 or 3 weeks. Or are you really in it for them where you're like, pray and intercede for you during this time, because I can tell that you're not 100% and you just really need someone to carry you.
That's really good. That's really good. That's what it's supposed to look like.
Well, it requires more of us. And I think sometimes we're not willing to put in the work.
Well, the world that we live in, Ange, is always saying, you deserve better. You shouldn't take that. You should, what do you need? What makes you happy? What? It's all about you. And when I always say, God's kingdom is kind of upside down. He's like, I came to teach you how to serve, not how to be served, right? How to love, not how to get what you want and how you get your needs met. It's just about a giving, a serving, a loving. And that's who we say that we follow, and that's who we're supposed to model ourselves after. So yeah, we got work to do, right? Expectations are a killer to any relationship. So the more we expect, obviously, the more disappointment we're going to have. So
it made me think of, when you were talking, it made me think of that old saying about how you sit with the low speaks greater than that the way you sit with the great. It's something like that. It's like, we had this happen at our July retreat where someone was really broken. They were struggling. And we saw this with our friend Crystal. She sits down next to this lady and she says, I don't understand. I'm not sure what to say, but I'll sit in the dark with you. And I remember you and I literally looked at each other and we were just like choked up. Like, that is love. When you can say to somebody, I don't have words, but I'll sit in the dark with you. Because sometimes people don't need words. They just need a warm body next to them to let them know they're not alone.
So true. That's awesome. Very true.
That just really made an impact on me. How about you? Like,
yeah, because I think so often we think we have to have the right things to say, but it's just to be there and just to love them and just to go out for coffee. I have people in my life and I've been in this place that I really don't know what to say because they're walking through some really hard things. And I just had somebody recently that called me and said, just kind of unloaded some heavy stuff. And And I was making breakfast for Jake, and I have a busy, just kind of a busy time right now, getting ready for the retreats and working and being a mom. And I'm thinking, you know what? I have a lot of stuff to do today, but this woman just needs to get out in a way. And I said, what if we meet for lunch? And she's like, today? And I'm thinking, hmm. I'm thinking, oh Lord, multiply my time. And she's like, are you kidding me? You and me and you have time? And I'm like, absolutely. we we went out for lunch, and we had such a nice time, and it just got her out of that space. We had some nice conversation. I didn't have answers for her, but I could be a friend to her, and I could give her some of my time, and I could brighten that part of her day. And that's all she talked about, is I just feel like a different person because I'm not focusing on that. This is what I needed. And we don't have to have oodles of time. We just have to sacrifice a little bit of our time and our space just to sit in the dark with people, or sit across the table with a cup of coffee and listen, right? Because I sure
Well,
that.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of the heart of the Father, that, I mean, we're on his time. He's not on ours.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know about you, but I've had times where, I had 1.5 million things to do, but I saw a need and stepped in and I met the need. And then somehow supernaturally, he gave me the grace to then complete everything plus
Oh,
some. Because why? Because I I set my agenda down, my schedule down, and I stepped into a slot where I knew I was needed at the moment because it was more important than the stuff that I had sitting there.
I say that all the time. I say, okay, you're going to have to multiply my time. And he does. I get everything done. And I have a wonderful time there too. And I just focus that you just redirect your focus and say, these things will get done when they get done. Because a person, even if it's an acquaintance that you're not even that close to, right? If it's opening the door, taking something, through a building for somebody, carrying something, whatever. It can be the smallest gesture. Doesn't have to be anything huge, but that's the way we're to operate. There's so much joy in that. We think we're doing it for other people, but when they always say you can't outgive God, you seriously can't, because when you do and you serve like he tells you to serve, it does something in your heart. And that's not why we do it, but it just keeps giving back, right? You're like, man, that was worth it. I did the right thing, right? And we just, yeah, if we all do that, we live in a beautiful world. And there's a lot of kind people out there. There's a lot of good people. And we need to love the difficult, because there's a reason they're difficult, because they've been through some difficult stuff. I guarantee it. People just aren't born difficult. People are hurt. They're wounded. They're triggered. They're sad. They don't have the answers sometimes. But you know what? We do. If we know
Well,
the Father, we have the only answer they need, right?
what I've discovered is that, I think, you had kind of mentioned it earlier, was like how we meet the needs of our kids, like I think God has innately placed within us women the ability to be a nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
And something I have realized is that I am a nurturer. I do feel like I can love pretty well. Like, or if I'm sitting with somebody, just to make them feel like they are the most important thing in the world when they're sitting with me, because that's my heart to do that, right? But I also have noticed that when it's been placed within us to be a nurturer, we carry, it's like kind of what the Holy Spirit does for us. Like, he sits with us, he talks with us, he communes with us, he's here to guide us, to lead us, to, and we have that. We're kind of a parallel of who the Holy Spirit is to us. That's what we do for others. But with that, think about this. It's like when we're a nurturer for our kids, who do they run to when they are the maddest? They come at us. When they're having a bad day, they will take it out on us. When they got bullied at school, they'll come at you over the dinner table. Like, it's like mamas kind of get beat up, you know? Why? Because honestly, at the end of the day, they know that you're the safe person that they can do that with, because when they're all done with their little fit, they know you're going to come back with them, and you're going to give your open arms. You're going to love them unconditionally. And seeing that on a spiritual level with people in my life too, I feel like when I've had the best intentions with people and I have loved them where they were at, they actually ended up attacking me. And I kind of got the brunt of the stuff that they were dealing with. And I had a couple different times where the Lord said to me, I allowed them to do that because I know your heart. And at the day, when push comes to shove, when all their stuff settles, their dust settles, and they come running back, I know that you'll be the one to open your arms to them and say, it's okay. It's okay. I love you. And I knew you were just having a bad day. And what does that do to a person when they have to humble themselves and come back? I feel, picture like a dog groveling, kind of like, and you say to them, I already forgave what you did. I just knew that you were just not in a good space. Mm-hmm. Like, how healing would that be to have that as your return when you realize you were wrong and you get met with that unconditional love? It would make you literally blow up and flourish to have that kind of response come back to you.
Right.
So I think we have to understand that we as women, when we are created to be nurturers, we're going to take some hits.
Right.
We are.
And not to take it personal. I even tell my son that. He'll get really upset about something, and I'm like, just don't take it personal, because it's not a personal thing. It's something that's going on inside of them. You know what I mean? Because when you take it personal, then what do? You strike back. You become self-protective. You get angry, and it just goes round and round, right? Instead of just going, okay, what's going on there? Or, I'm sorry you feel like that. Or just backing off for a while, letting the dust settle, because we can say things that, we can be really treated poorly and badly, and then turn around and have a response that meets it, and we're right in the middle of it. We're no better, right? I remember going through some really difficult times in my life, with a very difficult, hurtful person, and all these things would come at me, and I would write this letter back, and I would be like, okay, Lord, can I send it? And he'd be like, no. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'll read it again in the morning. Then maybe you'll let me send it. And when I cooled down, I would read it back, and I'm like, wow, that is a really angry person talking. Like, that's embarrassing. Like, I don't want to be this person. So I'm not going to respond, because that will make me that person. That's not who I am. And I'm not. So sometimes we just have to cool off, because words can be said, things can be done, and we're in the heat of it then. Even when we've been wronged, we become wrong because we respond wrong.
Oh, does that make sense? Oh, for sure. Like, I think about just years ago, when I was really coming into the maturity that God wanted to build into me, and it's like fiery reactions. Like, somebody make me mad, man, I'm telling you what, I'd tear them up with my mouth. And then you can't ever take that back. And it's like, Dave is a deep thinker. So many situations in our life where, that you know, it was, we had to respond to somebody, you know, by email or by text, or we had to make a hard phone call or whatever. And I'd be like, let's call him. Let's tell him this. Let's tell him that. And he'd be like, can we just take a few days? Like, why do you feel like you got to answer right away? Can we just take a few days and process on it? And, but you know, the wisdom in that is that he is saying, you know, sometimes it takes a few days for us to be able to settle down, and then you respond differently when it's not coming from a fiery reaction, but rather like, you know, you've been able to sit with your thoughts for a while, see it from God's perspective, maybe come up higher, and ultimately your goal is to respond in a way that is going to bring healing and restoration.
So good.
And you can't do that if you're going to snap back with a fiery reaction immediately,
Yep.
right?
Your emotions can really get in the way. And you do have to come to a point where you decide if you're going to take the high road. And people can really the enemy will try to push you in to a situation where you become somebody that he wants you to be, not somebody you want to be. Trust me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is difficult to love difficult people, but guess what? Sometimes we are the difficult people, depending on where we're at, the kind of day we've had. And we want grace. We want patience. We want somebody to take the high road with us. We want a safe place. So we need to be willing to give it to others, you know? So I think it's a good place to.
What I was just going to say real quick, when you talked about like, we want grace and, you know, we want that, but you have to be willing to give it too. I just thought real quick, I thought the other thing that I know I always wanted in relationship is I wanted people to understand my motives. I wanted people to understand my heart, to know that I didn't have an ill feeling. I needed them to hear my heart. Like I'm not in this to hurt anybody. Like, but then it's like, as much as we want people to hear our heart and to understand our motives, whatever, like we have to be able to do that too. Mm-hmm. And times we don't. We're immediately judgmental, and we're like, I know their motives. You know, they're thinking this, and before you know it, you're spinning and you're creating a scenario that is so far from the truth. And that's how you know that the enemy has grabbed your thoughts. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to add that real quick. But I love this space that we're in, Barb, like that he's speaking to us at the exact same time about the exact same thing. He's raising us up to love the difficult, the unlovable, the unlovely. Like honestly, that's what we're called to do. And it's really not about us. Hate to say it.
Doggone it. Oh yeah. It is quite the adventure, and it is quite the challenge every day of our lives to live like our Father, the one who is such a great example. And yeah.
Oh, and one more thing that I forgot that I had on my notes is boundaries with the word. You know, what we've been talking about is loving unconditionally and all that, and setting good, healthy boundaries. You know, we are by no means advocating or defending that if you're being abused, if someone is dishonoring you and, you know, they are mentally abusive and all that, like, you know, we're not saying that, well, you just, you know, love them through it without finding your voice. Or, you know, I would just recommend to whoever's listening, if you are trying to love a difficult person and you know that you are laying yourself down over and over and over again, and they are not reciprocating and giving you back the same honor and the same kind of unconditional love that you're giving them. I mean, there is that place as well, where we have to study the word. We really do. We have to see, well, what does the word say about this? What does the word say about, how I'm to be treated? That husbands are to love their wives as Christ loves the church, or whatever. And that is our opportunity to find our voice and to be able to say, this is not okay. I said that there's been times that the Lord has said to me, you are honoring that person by not letting them get away with what they've always gotten away with. So it's okay for you to say what you just did is not okay. It doesn't align with the word. It doesn't align with my purpose, and it doesn't align with yours. So how can we fix this? And so, we're not saying that by this unconditional love that we just lay down and we just take it. There's something really powerful about allowing him to build into us what he wants to build into us, so that we can give his truth, his truth that's found in the word. And that is probably the most powerful boundary we can set.
I would agree. Yep. So true. Okay, so we have a retreat coming up
this weekend.
Yes.
18th.
We're super excited. And we have another one coming up in January. So make sure you check that out. You got plenty of time to plan. This place that we have in January is amazing. It's beautiful. Where's it located, Ange?
It's in Uniontown, Ohio, and I mean, it is gorgeous. That's part of the experience, is that you get to stay in this place with us for the weekend. But Barb, don't forget, we have 2 spots open literally for this next weekend.
Yeah, last minute cancellations because of work and stuff. So hey, if you want to sneak in, here's your chance to do it. We're making these spots half price, so it's $125. It's literally covering your 2-night stay at a gorgeous place, all your food. It's going to be amazing, and the retreat. So if you can make it, or you want to come with a friend, contact us immediately. Okay. And that is in Johnstown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ohio, which is kind of close to New Albany,
Columbus,
yeah. Columbus.
Yeah. So yeah, don't be shy. Just give us a call, give us a text. We would love to fill those beds, because I think, gosh, you don't want to miss it. If there's an opening, I think it's going to be an amazing time with the Lord, and meeting new people and learning a lot of great stuff. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very, very much so.
Yeah. So that's it for tonight, Sunday night. And we won't see you next week because we'll be at the retreat. And hopefully we will see you the following. But we just want to ask the Lord tonight to help us all to love well, to love the ones that aren't lovable, and pray that people love us when we're not lovable, because we all need that grace and mercy. Right, Ange?
Yeah, for sure. And I just happened to remember when you talked about how we won't be here next Sunday because of the retreat. The following Sunday is after my surgery. So I'll be like 5 days out. So probably won't be that Sunday either. So we could be looking at a couple weeks out before one.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful month, and call us if you want to go to the retreat.
Sounds good. Thanks everybody for jumping on.